a lot of confidence in an essay that it is about his son Sean from his first marriage, because Cecil Day-Lewis had 2 marriages, and I think that's actually relevant. Sometimes that kind of autobiographical detail that is not that relevant from a poem, but I think later on in the last stanza when he talks about other partings that have been very hard for him, I think we might think about the breakup of other relationships as well. Okay. So it's 1956, and Sean, this is the year when Sean, his son, starts at a boarding school. The boarding school was called All Hallows School, and it's in Somerset, and it's a boarding school, you know what that is. So Cecil Day-Lewis has kind of packed his son off, and he starts at this school in year 7, and he's not coming home until Christmas. But what he does do is go and watch this football match. I have seen people talk about this poem and describe it as Sean Day-Lewis's first day at school, and it's not that. I've actually seen websites, revision websites, guides to this poetry, which says, oh yeah, it's about the first day at school. It doesn't say the first day at school. It says the first football match, not necessarily the same thing. Okay, so Cecil Day-Lewis goes to watch the football match at school. Let's start from the top line, and then let's see how this set of memories and this set of feelings plays out. It is 18 years ago, almost to the day, a sunny day with leaves just turning. Okay, so I've seen it pointed out and commenting on that it's 18 years ago, and this is because his son is 18. That's not what he's talking about here. The maths of that doesn't work. He's talking about 18 years now since his son was 11 years old. However, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, well, 18 isn't just a kind of a random number. 18 does have that connotation to it, that ring to it, which is about the point at which a child turns into an adult. So he's not talking about his child turning 18, but I also think it's possible that the number isn't purely coincidental, okay, because it has those connotations. Almost to the day, dash, and then jumping down to line 2, a sunny day with leaves just turning. Couple of things going on here. I think, first of all, there's a lot packed into the idea that it's a sunny day with leaves just turning. That's basically a way of saying it was autumn. Autumn will be no surprise to anybody. Everyone will recognise that is a season which is symbolic of change. Okay, and it's a kind of a change which is, the thing about autumn, it does that thing where things are becoming more beautiful because they're actually getting older and they're starting to decay and they're starting to die. There is a certain kind of paradox in the fact that as things really start to fall apart and they don't have the kind of youth and the sunniness of spring and summer, that actually there's a phase that's kind of over and everyone goes, oh, it's the most beautiful season, look at all the wonderful colours and all of that stuff, right? So that's kind of in there as well, okay. But it's autumn. There's a literal significance to this as well, which is the fact that it's September. It's telling us that this is the start of the new term at school. If we didn't know at this point, because we might not, right? So it's a sunny day with leaves just turning. I do think that there's something quite clever going on in the jump between the day at the end of line 1 and a sunny day at the beginning of line 2. That's because of the phrase almost to the day. I suspect that when you say, oh, it was 18 years ago to the day, I feel like you're kind of really referring to the day that it is now today, right? Like 18 years ago today, not next week or something, today, but minus 18 years. Okay, so that first day, I think, means today, the day that Cecil Day-Lewis wrote the poem. But when he drops down after this dash to a sunny day, he's taken us back into the past, because the day there, though it's the same word, is now the one that is inside the memory, inside the past. I think that's quite a subtle little jump that he does there, which kind of gets us into the mindset of going into this memory, of going backwards into this reverie that Cecil Day-Lewis is sitting around on this day now, 18 years later, and he's kind of thinking about it. Okay. Sunny day with leaves just turning, the touchlines newly ruled. Okay. And again, there's a literal significance to this. He's watching a football match and it's the beginning of the school term, so those white lines on the grass have been freshly painted by the groundskeepers of the school, and it's all fresh and it's all new, and they play this game of football. I think the phrase newly ruled has got a lot of kind of double significance there as well. Newly ruled lines on the pitch and on the grass, but also think about rules and the new sets of rules that the child will be now going on to. But also, as well as rules the word ruled, which means to be governed by and dominated and to be newly ruled. It's like the son is no longer ruled by the father, he is newly ruled through these sets of rules by, you know, the schoolmasters, the headmaster and whatever. So I think there's kind of echoes of that in there as well. The touchlines, newly ruled since I watched you play your first game of football. Then, like a satellite wrenched from its orbit, go drifting away. Okay, this is the first really big simile of the poem, and it's the one that people tend to really remember and learn as a quotation because it's so vivid and it's so visual. It's a really nice little line of poetry. It's really, really, really evocative of what he's talking about. Like a satellite wrenched from its orbit. You can picture that image in your head, right? But what's quite interesting in terms of the historical context is that the world's first ever artificial satellite called Sputnik will not be launched until 1957 by Russia. So if you don't know that's going to happen in 1956 and you don't really know what an artificial satellite is, he's probably not talking about that. What he'll be talking about is a natural satellite, and by that we mean basically the moon. So you've got the moon in orbit, much smaller than the large weighty planet, which has all of the gravity and all of the mass, and then you've got this small thing spinning around, and if you can imagine that moon just suddenly being flung out of its orbit, it's going to go, as he says, drifting away, and that verb there is quite key as well, because it would be flung out into nothingness of space, but it would be basically directionless, aimless, right? It would just be drifting off, as opposed to having somewhere very, very distinct to go. That's important because that key verb is sort of echoed with a couple of other things that he's going to say in just a moment, all right? It moves on to the next stanza. Now, I do like this enjambment between line 5 and line 6. There is absolutely no end stop at all there. Wrenched from its orbit, go drifting away, no end stop, gap, behind a scatter of boys, behind a scatter of boys. As soon as he gets behind the scatter of boys, that's when he starts to lose sight of his son, right? And he's off, he's over there. So I think that enjambment there, you know, a lot of the time, to be honest, a lot of the time we pick out enjambment and it doesn't have loads and loads and loads of significance. I think here it's got loads of significance. It does because it's directly making us picture the gap, the separation, the distance that is suddenly appearing between Cecil Day-Lewis and his son. Okay, so you've got to think at this point in the first stanza what this father is feeling like. He's obviously a proud dad who's gone to watch his son play football, and I think that as an AO3 context point as well, I think you really want to think about football matches and school football matches as a kind of embodiment of sort of masculine pride, right? You know, dads and sons, and don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that it's not just boys who can play football. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about going back into the 50s, and I'm talking about a kind of social, historical context at that point. And I get that feeling that, you know, he's chosen, of all the situations he could have chosen to speak about, Cecil Day-Lewis wants to talk about his dad and his son who were at football, right? And he's got there, and the football match is obviously finished. Who knows if they won or lost? We don't know, right? And maybe that's the moment that he feels like there's an opportunity to go, okay, well, let's catch up. Can we have a hug? Is he going to go and give his dad a hug in front of all of his, you know, other schoolboy mates? Of course he isn't. He's barely even acknowledged him. He hasn't run over to say hello. He's just disappearing off. And it's really, really, you know, upsetting for Cecil Day-Lewis at this moment to be feeling like this. Okay. There's a lot of emotional impact which is bound up